Jock Wilson joining us from QR77 in Calgary. He's been on the show before. He's the pre- and post-game host for the Stamp games. Jock, let's start with injuries. What do we know about the Stamps after the bye week? And I think that's one of the things people in Sasky are always wondering about at our riders. But what can you tell us about the Stamps? What do you know?
Hey, the Peters are getting a little healthier, Barney. That's the good news. Damen Alfred was taking team reps with the Stampeder offense today, and I think Rider fans remember the move back on July the 11th when he broke loose, for a couple of touchdown catches, including an 81-yard touch. The interesting thing with the Moose, though, is he basically got that wideout spot because Clark Barnes went down with an injury. The Calgary Stampeders feel more comfortable with Clark Barnes because he is a more complete player. He is a guy that runs some of the best routes, for this football club. So where do we slot in Damen Alfred if he is good to go against the Riders this weekend? Well, there were a couple of injuries, at camp today. Dom's on the inside. He's dealing with a little bit of a ding. He didn't practice today. And no Tevin Jones as well. Tevin Jones dealing with a little bit of an illness. So he might be okay come game time. So that's the story on the off ball, as Stampeders are getting healthy coming off the bye week. Still no Adrian Green. He didn't take any reps today. So, that seems to be the biggest concern. But hey, the Calgary Stampeders, they're coming off a win over the Blue Bombers, their third straight win over the Bombers. They're coming off a bye week. I would say this is almost the healthiest they have been all season long. Don't think you can use injury excuse because this team is pretty healthy right now.
Okay, so we can go on the record then and say Jock Wilson says that Damen Alfred is up for trade because they don't need him in Calgary.
I'm not sure I would go that far, but I would say this: let's enjoy him while he's in the Canadian Football League. I think it could be just like Joe, with Saskatchewan last year. This guy has this guy has the speed. He's got the wingspan, hey, is he going to be a long-term CFL player, or is he going to follow the NFL dream next season or the year after that? I don't know. So right now, I just tell Stampeder fans, let's enjoy him because he is a very, very dynamic player. And it's interesting, Barney. Everybody asks me about the Calgary Stampeders, how they've turned things around this season. And the way they've turned things around is Dave Dickinson has said it, that they hit on everything they did in the off season. They hit on their needs with Vernon Adams and Flo Ormalade. They hit on their free agent signings and Damon Webb, Derek Moncrief, Adrian Green, Miles Brown, Tevin Jones, Dominic Rhymes. They hit in the CFL draft because not only, is Damen Alfred lighting it up, but you got Chris Fortin, who is a rookie center, taking pretty well every snap with the injury to Bryce Bell. And, you've got your short yardage quarterback. You're not missing, Tommy Stevens because Quincy Vaughn has been so good in that short yardage situation. So I tell you what, give the organization credit. They hit on a lot of their coaches, Bob Slowick, the defensive coordinator. So right now there's some excitement in this city, and that's not a bad thing.
And that's not easy to do. So what they did is commendable. There's no doubt about it. The Stampeders will need to do blank to win the game on Saturday.
It's a great question. The one stat that I look at, and I get it, stats are for losers, but the one stat I look at, 3, 12, and do you know what that stat is?
You cut out there.
3-12-2 is Trevor Harris's record against the Calgary Stampeders.
Yeah, because talked with the last time we talked, it was Stampede. Yes. We talked a little Stampede. You mentioned that stat, and then you just mentioned the Stamps against the Riders in general, right?
Well, it's at Mosaic Stadium, the Stampeders have had nothing but success. Yeah. A little bit different here in Calgary, but that's a really interesting stat. Trevor Harris, hey, right now he's the best quarterback in the West. You can make a case he's the best quarterback in the Canadian Football League, probably the early odds-on favorite to win the Most Outstanding Player award, but that's really weird that he has such a terrible record against the Calgary Stampeders. And so Vernon Adams, he likes Saskatchewan. He had a 400-yard passing game, back in July. And, he had his longest touchdown pass, in his career. That was that 81-yarder by the Moose. So here's the deal, Barney. This is going to be a hell of a game. Both of these teams are really good. Both of these teams have excellences. If you're a winner, I have no idea. I just hope it's going to be a burner because the fans expect, and I hope the fans get it.
Where's Adam Bighill fitting in there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. He was getting close, and then he came down with the flu bug. I think what they're being very cautious with Adam Bighill. And I say that is because they don't want to mix up too much on defense. Defense has been very, very good. Markel Lee was supposed to be, Mike linebacker this year. He got early, so they went out and they signed Adam Bighill. They signed Kyle Wilson. Micah Tights has been, pretty good though on the in that Mike position. So I don't position to rush him back. We'll watch him a little closer this week, and I'm thinking probably Labor Day. If you're asking me, to pin a spot for Adam Bighill, that would be my guess at this point.
You talked about the hype a little bit in Calgary around the team, which is definitely needed everywhere in the CFL. But what kind of crowd are you expecting? Because obviously a lot of Saskatchewan people in Calgary. You can't really go 4 or 5 feet there. What are you expecting for a crowd?
It'll be a freaking Christmas tree again. You know the drill. Lots of red, lots of green. It's that's usually the case. The Stampede Bowl was the hottest ticket at the beginning of the season, but now with the Riders being 8-1, the Riders are the team to beat. The Stamps have already beat them once. There is some good excitement in the city right now. So I'll be disappointed. They've been average 21,000 this year. So I would be disappointed if they don't get about 25. And it looks like the weather is going to be fantastic. So, are we ever going to see McMahon Stadium packed again? Probably not. It's the barn is just not very pretty, and it's not a great atmosphere in there. But hey, the Riders there'll be some water mashing going on this weekend, and let's have some fun.
What's your take on the West in general? Now because we got BC looking like they could be a player and maybe going east. Who knows? What the West is obviously the cream right now. But what do you make of things?
And that makes this more important for the Calgary Stampeders, because if you look at the teams chasing the Stampeders, I think they got automatic wins this weekend because the East is so crappy. And, all of a sudden you've got BC at 5 wins. You've got Winnipeg at 5 wins. Edmonton, if they win this weekend, they'll be at 4 wins. So realistically, I think, there's more heat on the Calgary Stampeders. Obviously the Riders have a little bit of a cushion. The West is pretty good. And, never count out. You guys know you'll have your Labor Day series coming up against. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. The Stamps will have their Labor Day series against Edmonton. That's going to be interesting. Stampeders have what? They have 9 left. They have 3. They haven't played Edmonton yet. They haven't played BC yet this year. And then they've got this game against you. And then the other 3 games are against the Eastern opponents. And the other interesting thing for the Stampeders is they play 4 of their final 5 games on the road. So make your hay when you can, because, the Stampeders want to be a dominant team at home. And, boy, they came this close to being 100 in that Winnipeg game, because they could have lost that game very, very easily. And right now they're 3-2 at home. So they want to set the tone here at McMahon Stadium, without a doubt.
It's going to be a good one. If I do make the last-minute trip, any tips on the tailgate? Because it's something, so foreign here in Saskatchewan, because it's like, oh, no, we can't tailgate. Any tips if I'm tailgating in Calgary?
You know what? Just have fun, because there are so many parties out there, Barney. You can't have a bad time at the tailgate,
good.
especially if the sun is shining. And hey, it's there's just so many of them. Labor Day is usually the biggest one, but the Rider game on Saturday afternoon, 5:00 start. I love a 5:00 start Saturday afternoon. I think it's great for It's great for Stamps House after the game. So realistically. Just bring some good food, bring some booze, and let's fun.
and I've been known to try my luck at the Cowboys Casino after. So it all wraps up nicely. Thanks so much for doing this, Jock. Looking forward to the game, and then we'll catch up again for sure.
Remember, 3, 12, and 2. Interesting stat.
They're printing the T-shirts, I heard, right now, and somewhere in downtown Calgary. Right on, man. Have a good one.
Take care.